Hello everyone and welcome to the Liverpool Hope University Virtual Open Day. This is the early childhood session. My name's Stephen, I work in the recruitment team. I'm here to support the early childhood team with this session, having studied early childhood myself. If you've got any questions about general university life, about the course itself, which I'm sure these guys are better to answer that, or about any questions you might have about starting September, feel free to use the Q&A function. That's how we'll be answering all of our questions. We have got time at the end designated for the Q&A, but we should be able to answer them as and when they come in as well. So I'll hand over to the team now.
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Cleona Boyle and I'm Head of Early Childhood at Liverpool Hope, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Zoe and Pinar and by one of our students, Laura. So between us we'll deliver the presentation today to give you a flavour of what the experience is like studying early childhood at Liverpool Hope. As you can see, even from that very first slide there, Liverpool Hope is an absolutely beautiful campus. It's quite a small university and with a beautiful campus, and it's an ideal environment to be studying a subject like early childhood, where we think a lot about children in the outdoor setting, children and play, the child and nature, and it's a real privilege to be able to do that in such beautiful surroundings, but also in such a closely knit community of a small university. We're very much a community within communities, within the university. Early childhood is a community, but we're also in the broader community of Liverpool as a city, which has such an exciting offer for a person coming to study in terms of the wide cultural life of the city. So certainly Liverpool Hope, a community within community. So we'll give you a flavour of our early childhood community as we walk through. So presenting today are myself, my name is Cleona, and my interest and background in early childhood is in the political social dimension of early childhood. I have worked a lot in the voluntary sector with children and families, and I'm particularly interested in children's rights. I'll hand you over to my colleague Zoe, and then Pinar and Laura will also introduce themselves.
Thanks, Cleona. So hi, everyone. I'm Zoe Nikiforidou. I come from Greece. My research interests focus mainly around children's cognition and understanding of risk. I've been working at Liverpool Hope with the early childhood fantastic team for the last 8 years. And I'm looking forward to welcome you and to walk with you through your journey while you study early childhood with us.
Thank you, Zoe. Maybe Pinar, you'd follow?
Thank you, Cleona, and also Zoe. Hi, everyone. My name is Pinar Öztop, and this is my 3rd year of joining early child team. And my background is in developmental psychology, and I'm interested in understanding how children are being creative and how they are understanding each other and how they play and work together. And I'm teaching in 1st and 2nd year mainly in early childhood. And like my colleague said, looking forward to meet you all and also looking forward to answer if you have any questions at all. And yeah, hope to see you hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Pinar. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? I know we'll be hearing a bit from you later on.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Laura. I'm a single honours level C student going into level I next year. And I'll just hopefully be able to give you a bit more of an insight into the student life, how I found 1st year at Hope and how I'm finding the course, how I enjoyed the 1st year, and answer any questions about that.
Great, thank you very much, Laura. So between the 4 of us, and indeed with Steve as well, we will give you a sense of that holistic picture of life at Liverpool Hope, and particularly studying early childhood, of course. So you have met some of us here. Of course, the early childhood team is a bigger, broader team of people than that. So we have colleagues from a whole range of backgrounds. Important to say that early childhood is an interdisciplinary subject. And in keeping with that, we draw in our academic team from a range of disciplines, including, for example, psychology, Pinar, Jim, Zoe, coming from that background, education, Babs coming from that background, Helen, Linda, Sarah, also sociology and politics, myself, Harriet. So we draw from a wide variety of disciplines that make up the academic study of early childhood. So if some of you are thinking of coming and studying this subject and people have said to you, oh, early childhood, that must be nice, that must be easy, you can certainly counter that by saying, well, interesting, yes, easy, probably not, because we're really drawing from that range of disciplines. You are becoming a little bit of a psychologist, an educationalist, a sociologist by studying early childhood. But the comforting thing about all of that is that while we're experts in our fields, our challenge in teaching you is making that content interesting, making that content enjoyable and accessible, and really making it relatable to your experience as a human being and as a student and as a citizen of this world. So a lot of reflection, a lot of bringing together understandings from different disciplines, and a very experienced and connected team. And as you've seen so far, even from our initial introductions, our team are drawn from not just UK contexts, but from across the world. For example, Zoe, who's with us today, is from Greece, and Pinar is from Turkey. So we draw on those global experiences as well in terms of early childhood. So you'll get to meet all of our colleagues along the way. So early childhood as a subject is really gaining prominence in the world. It's gaining kind of a global respect and recognition as a subject, because I suppose research has shown and experience has shown that early childhood is extremely important. How our experiences in the first years, in the first 8 years of life, really makes a difference in terms of the child's outcomes in health, in education, in well-being, and in life in general. So early childhood is incredibly important, as is demonstrated by research in the field. So you're entering into, if you're considering the study of early childhood, you're entering into a discipline that is really gaining currency and prominence. As we have said, early childhood at Liverpool Hope is an interdisciplinary subject. So we're drawing from a whole range of research, a whole range of academic practice, and that makes it really interesting. And each and every one of you coming to study early childhood will probably find an aspect of the discipline that really fascinates you. You may find that you're really intrigued by psychology and understanding how children develop and think. You may find that you're intrigued by subjects like politics and sociology, or you may find that you're really interested in what makes children's experience different in different parts of the world, or indeed you may be interested in working to challenge some of the inequalities that children face. So each and every one of you as students will find your field that becomes really important to you and that is the focus of your interest. And indeed, in your final year of study, you will have an opportunity through your dissertation project to really focus in on that interest and really do something that makes the subject your own. So early childhood includes psychology. It includes history. Also, we look at how childhood has changed over the ages. Sociology, philosophy, as well as, importantly, aspects of health, social policy, law, politics, and economics. So if that sounds a little intimidating this afternoon to think, oh my goodness, am I going to have to be an expert in all of those fields? Well, what you will do is you will draw from those fields and bring to bear your knowledge of the child and childhood and indeed parenting and community and really develop your own approach to the subject. But importantly, as a comfort, Each and every one of the academics in the field is tasked with making their discipline understandable to you and comprehensible. So you will have a really broad education in this field and be very well equipped with this degree to enter the world of work. Of course, we think very highly of our subject. We're very proud of our subject, very proud of our academic track record. But it is not just us who say so. There is a very important national student survey that is enacted every year, where all of the final year students in all the universities are asked what their perspective is on their learning. So it's an anonymous survey. We don't have control over how people respond, of course, but every year we are maybe not surprised but delighted at the results. So once again, last year we did really well in the National Student Survey. Early childhood was being rated very highly by students and remains significantly above the sector and university average. And our satisfaction rate in NSS was over 90%, so that was excellent and above average. Maybe not the first thing that you would be thinking about when you're coming to university are, I wonder how this university is in terms of assessment and feedback. I wonder how this university is in terms of organisation and management. But if you think about it, in terms of your experience as a student, it's very important that the university's approach to organising your learning is well done. Very important that your structure of your learning is highly well organised. It's really important that your teaching is of high quality, and important to say that Hope as a university is outstanding in that field. In that, in the Teaching Excellence Framework, we're actually rated gold, which is the top in the country. So we're strong on teaching. We're also strong on assessment and feedback, which will be very important to you because your journey through education is one where you will want to continuously improve in your education. So assessment and feedback, sitting with your tutors one-to-one, looking at work that you've submitted and seeing how you can improve that is going to be really important in terms of your success at university. In Liverpool Hope, part of our value is that we aim to know our students one by one. We aim to know our students as individuals, and we absolutely do. In the first few weeks of term, we will know all of you one by one as individuals. And our approach to assessment and feedback is that we will sit with you, we will go through your work, we will explain where you could improve so that you can have success as a student in your journey through the university. So in terms of studying early childhood, you can study early childhood in a range of different ways. So some of you may be interested in studying the discipline as a single honour student. So you study 100% early childhood. And Laura is going to give you a bit of an insight into her experience. And her experience is as one of those students who chose to study the subject as a single honours, with that unity of focus for the discipline. Some others may choose to study the subject as a combined subject, which is another interesting way of studying early childhood, where you combine it with another subject. So, for example, popular combinations with early childhood at Hope would be education. So some people, I think Stephen maybe studied early childhood and education.
Yeah, that's right.
You can study early childhood with special educational needs. You can study early childhood with childhood and youth if you want to look at childhood right across the age range. But you can also study early childhood with another eclectic range of disciplines, which include criminology. Some of our current students are studying criminology with early childhood. You can study early childhood with dance. You can study early childhood with drama, or indeed, if you're interested, for example, in going into early childhood, perhaps as a business, maybe setting up your own nursery or something like that. Some of our students have studied early childhood with business management. So a range of different possibilities for studying, combining with another subject, or studying the discipline on its own as a single honours subject. So those choices are for you to make. So I'll hand over now to Laura, who will give you some of her impressions of what it's like to stand in those shoes. This time last year, I met Laura probably for the first time when she arrived for an open day at Liverpool Hope. And right away, I have to say, I could tell that we had somebody who was interested and engaged, and who, of course, has turned out to be a really excellent student, a first year student, and somebody as well who gets involved in all aspects of student life. So no better person to hand you over to than Laura to give you a bit of an insight into first year.
Thank you, Cleona. So like Cleona said, I'm a single honours student. So I've really wanted to just get the full in-depth experience of all the different aspects of childhood. So I could really think about what my focus is going to be, and obviously I still don't know yet, but I've got plenty of time to figure that out, and I'm really enjoying the process of doing that, discovering different disciplines that are available. As a first year, obviously it's a completely new experience. You don't know what to expect. There's lots of changes. You're moving away from home. You have to meet new people and get to know your tutors and your class and think, oh, what's going to happen? But I think, like Cleona said about it being a really close-knit community feel, that aspect of hope is what really drawn it to me in the first place, and that really helped me get settled in, I think. Especially when I was going through a bit of a tough time. I think everyone at Hope was really supportive of that, and helpful in helping me get through that and really feel like I belong in this place, and it's very homely, and it's the place that I want to be. So the campus itself is really lovely. I really love the nature in the grounds, and in induction week, when we all get to know each other, we had this task where we had to go out and take photos of different places where children might like to play or engage with, and I really enjoyed that activity because it allowed me to explore where I was going to be staying for the next 3 years, and also get involved by connecting it to my course. It's just a really pretty campus. I think it feels very safe and secure, which is what I wanted from the environment I was going to be studying and living in. So I really like that about it. In Freshers Week, that was a really enjoyable week because there was so much going on. There's so much you could get involved in. There was, of course, like the nights out and things, which were really fun. But there's also a whole range of activities going on. There's quizzes. There's a big quiz that happened. That was really fun. Lots of different themed nights and live bands and different things going on, as well as lots of taster events for different societies. So I think there's so much opportunity doing that you can just go to anything, even if you've never experienced it before, just to get a little taste and just try it out. I think that's a really good thing to do. Just try and meet different people and try something new. The halls, I stayed in halls for my first year, and I really enjoyed that. I really liked having my own independence, and cooking for myself was something I really found that I started to enjoy. It's nice to meet a lot of different people and sort of have that time away if that's what you choose if you're studying here. So I think that's a good experience if you're considering that. And the city of Liverpool itself, I'd say, is a really student-centered city. It's like a big capital for culture. There's so much going on that you can explore. There's all the different museums, like the Walker Art Gallery as well, that we go to on a field trip for the course. I really enjoyed that because we really got to see how different children were in different circumstances, different cultures, get inside the mind and think what were the factors affecting their background and why are they living this way. So I think that was a really good task to do. It really helped me get fully into the course, especially just when I was settling in. And then the course itself, I really enjoyed this year. There's so much to take in, and because it's all sort of different, coming from different places, I really like that aspect of it. Firstly, like the historical aspect of it, all the different pioneers, and realizing what actually is a child. There's no universal, concept of what it is, so we must question it and discover for ourselves what it means. I really like that. And also like the importance of play. Why do children play? Why do they need to? How does their brain work and develop? And then other concepts as well, which I wouldn't have even begin to think of exploring, but I'm so glad that I got to experience. And I think what's really good about Hope is the way that it is taught, and we can engage with the content, specifically in like the seminars or when we get to just discuss the content, so we can have a real conversation and pitch in our ideas and opinions to really get a grasp of what the topic is and just fully explore it. I think that was good. So I think that's about it. If there's any questions.
Great, Laura.
Yeah.
That gives a lovely flavour, I think, of how it feels to be at Hope as a student. And I hope that those of you who are tuning in either now or listening to this as a webinar later can imagine yourself in Laura's shoes. And I think she's given a lovely picture of all aspects of life, both on the course and in the city and in the university. And that's really good to listen to. So thank you, Laura. And there will be an opportunity if people want to ask questions to anyone, including Laura, at the end of this. So thanks for that. Sorry, just clicking the slide here. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over now to Pinar, who is going to talk you through what you will be learning at Level C, which is your first year at Liverpool Hope in Early Childhood. Over to you, Pinar.
Thanks a lot, and thank you, Laura, as well, for the lovely experience sharing. So I might be capturing some of the things that Laura mentioned as well while I walk you through the first year. So in the first year in early childhood, we explore main fundamental theories of early childhood, and we slowly start building some connections between those theories and their real life applications and what we see in practice. One thing that Laura also mentioned as well, to understand that childhood is not just one construct or one way of, it's not just something very objective, it can be subjective. So it could be perceived differently in different times, in different historical times. It could be perceived differently philosophically and culturally. So childhood is changing over times and over different places, and it's evolving as well. So we discovered the fact that childhood is different in different times and different contexts as a construct of childhood. And we covered this through different assignments, different field trips, and this is very important as a fundamental start for the first year. And then we slowly go into understanding how children are developing in the early years from birth up to age 8, roughly. So we discover how children are learning things, how children are starting to pay attention, how children can cognitively, how they can think, and how their minds are working when they learn something. And also we discover how they feel emotions, how they express emotions, whether they understand others' emotions, how they develop morally, and how do they make friends, how do they relate with others, which is social development. So we start discovering how the child is developing at this year. We also cover the important figures in early childhood, so those of like Froebel, Steiner, Isaac. So these people are very important figures in early childhood who have brought milestone approaches, pedagogical approaches to early childhood, and their ideas are still shaping the early childhood education and care today. So we give the fundamentals of these important ideas, as well as some very important theories from the likes of Piaget, Freud, Erikson, and we different researchers as well. And then we move on to understanding how children are forming relationships, their primary caregivers, which is most case we mean parents like mothers and fathers, but it could be anyone who is a primary caregiver, and also pets. So basically we're trying to see how children are forming bonds and relationships with people around them. And we discover also the importance of play at this stage, because it's a fundamental part of many different early childhood pedagogical approaches. It's especially very important in the frameworks of in the UK and in England early childhood framework as well. So these are the basic things that we start covering, but we have an academic approach. So we discuss early childhood with an academic perspective, but we always try to build those perspectives into real life applications and practices as well. And we can move on to the next slide now. Right, thank you. And so, as I said, we are trying to develop an academic perspective of understanding and childhood in the first year. As I said it, we started discovering first what is childhood, why childhood, what we mean might be different in different parts of the world and in different times of our historical periods as well. So we discovered this through different types of learning, like assignments and field trips. And we also explore the idea that childhood is more than a physical growth from birth to adolescence, but actually it's the child developing and learning and in different multiple aspects and perspectives. So we're trying to cover this by looking at development of the child. And we also learn about this by looking at the perspectives of different pioneers who are important for early childhood, as well as different theories. So this is roughly what we are doing in the first year.
Thank you so much, Pinar. And as you can see there, in terms of looking at how childhood is different throughout history and across cultures, that's a really important part of our approach. And of course, we live that as well, because we draw on a range of international experiences in our team, including yourself, Pinar, who has just introduced that so well. So we really do walk the talk in terms of thinking about how our experience, a day-to-day lived experience of children, relates to the theory at every stage. Okay, so I'll hand over now to Zoe, who leads Level I, which is your second year of study, and she'll give you a flavour of how that curriculum is experienced in the second year.
Thanks, Cleona. Thanks, everyone. So yes, at your second year of studies, which is Level I, the intermediate level of your studies, we move a little bit in more detail in capturing different aspects of health and well-being. And we consider which are some different influences, some different factors, some different experiences that can shape a baby's or a child's or a family's health and well-being. We start from the more medical model that has to do with the physical health of someone, but then we also go beyond and explore other factors too, like the social determinants of health, like experiences maybe in an educational setting that could affect some child's well-being, like the fact that, for instance, nowadays children are distancing themselves more and more from nature. They don't have so much contact, and this has detrimental implications on, first of all, their health, but also on how they understand the world, how they understand nature, how they are part of and embedded within nature. So especially in the modern societies, of course, because as Pinar mentioned, when we approach early childhood, when we approach childhood in general, we don't take into account what happens only in the Western societies, in the dominant, if you want, in dominant parts of the world. We try to take into account how these experiences differ and are varied within different parts of the world, and how different cultures and different communities interpret and raise and care in different ways for the well-being of their children. So that's a main theme that we cover over our second year of studies. Then we move on to explore how children best learn, and we uncover different learning theories, like more traditional ones, like behaviorism, like constructivism, but then we move on and we explore also more modern and more contemporary learning theories as well, like, for instance, Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, where he states that we don't all have, you know, one IQ that fits and works for everyone. We have multiple intelligences, which means that we might be really good in some of them, really bad in others. And it's a matter of identifying which are our strengths, which are children's strengths, and trying to promote them. And instead of having a deficit model where we try to fix things, it's a matter of appreciating how and where children are good at, and encouraging these strengths and these skills and supporting them further. So yes, we cover learning theories, and we cover also different implications of learning. And again, we also explore how learning has changed over time, how, for instance, the impact of technology has changed how brain functions anymore. So children, instead of maybe looking for information through books, now at the end of their finger, they have the answer by tapping on a screen or by typing a few words on Google search, for instance. So how does all this influence and affects, and how does it affect how children think and learn? And another, for example, a contemporary issue that we explore has to do with risk-taking, and the fact that at the name of protection and safeguarding, especially again in Western societies, we somehow suffocate children. We somehow have so many rules and so many regulations in place where we don't allow children to breathe and to get hurt and to fall over and to get injured at a minor level, of course. So how do all these new realities and experiences change children's learning as well as children's well-being? And then what we also cover at this second year of studies is we go beyond England and the United Kingdom overall, and we see what happens with the international provision in early childhood education and care in other countries. And we explore which are the underpinning principles and the ethos of these other provisions that make them quite outstanding and famous. For example, we explore the forest school approach. We explore the Reggio Emilia approach from Italy, the Te Wariki from New Zealand, HighScope from the States. And we go in detail and familiarize ourselves with what is it that makes these provisions work for their children in these countries. What is it that, how are children valued? How are children understood and positioned within this different from the early years foundation stage provisions? And a good example in regards to that is amongst the next slide. Has to do, yes, with the forest school approach, which is an approach that was founded in the Scandinavian countries, where children explore, learn, and spend their days outdoors. They are engaging themselves with outdoor learning, with nature learning, and they have a totally different initial foundations in how they develop their thinking and how they develop their understanding of the world. So imagine how different would it be for a child to be within a concrete classroom compared to a child who would be dressed up appropriately outdoors in a little forest land. So yes, I'm leaving it there. Yes, I could get carried away, but yes, it's a matter of exploring all these different aspects. So I think the second year of studies also raises a little bit your understanding and knowledge, and also introduces you to this sense of being critical, of questioning things. Why? Why this? How does this work? Or does it work for everyone in the same way? Why not? Why yes? So it's a matter also of developing further a little bit your understanding of different themes and topics, and taking into account different perspectives as well.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I think that gives a lovely comprehensive idea of what the experience is like in the second year of the course. And of course, we don't just, you know, discuss and talk about issues like Forest School, because Zoe and Pinar and the Level I team also will take you to places like Childwall Woods, which is really near the campus, to think about Forest School in that context. And one of our recent graduates actually has her own business where she has set up an independent forest school also, so students have the chance to really see those approaches in action, which is fabulous. So I'll maybe continue on and give you a bit of a flavour of what the third year of the early childhood programme feels like. It's the level that I teach on. So in third year, level H, so the higher level of study, you will look in depth at policy and legislation where it affects young children and families. And that will include looking at international instruments like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and also at domestic policy and legislation, for example, in the 4 nations of the UK. So looking at how international global instruments, instruments that enforce child rights, are enacted within the domestic context. So you might say, oh goodness, that sounds really complicated and really different from what I understood as early childhood. But if you think about an issue like safeguarding and child protection, that shows very clearly why it's very important for an early childhood graduate to have an understanding of policy and legislation where it relates to young children and families. So that's a very big focus of your final year at Liverpool Hope. So looking at social policy, also looking at how social policy has evolved and changed over time. So under what circumstances, for example, did we come to have the Children Act? Under what circumstances did we have the policy Every Child Matters? What was the role, for example, of the Laming inquiry into the death of Victoria Clambier? And how did that shape our policy and legislation? How did that shape our measures to protect and safeguard our children? So we look at that whole raft of very important issues in terms of the policy and legislation. We also look at contemporary issues in terms of considering social inequality. We look at discrimination in terms of race, ethnicity, disability, other types of marginalisation of children and young people. We also look at international issues like the impact of war and conflict on children. That's one of my own particular interests. But we look at, for example, how war and conflict has displaced children and families, and the impact, for example, of international patterns of migration. So we consider that, and we also sometimes look at that through a historical lens of thinking about, for example, children who migrated from the port of Liverpool, and then we look at the importance of early years practitioners being aware of the needs of children who have come from different places and made cities like Liverpool their home. So we think about that in the round from all those different areas. One of the most interesting pieces of work that we do at Level H is we look at a serious case review. So we take one of the serious cases from the NSPCC database and we examine it in detail. So each student will pick their own serious case review and examine it in detail in terms of using a problem-based approach. So we get together in the classroom and we simulate what would be a multidisciplinary team meeting in terms of a case of a child, and we look at the role of social worker, we look at the role of the early years teacher, we look at the role of, for example, a health visitor and a midwife, very much simulating a real case type scenario. And I know our students really find that very, very interesting and very useful, and that forms the basis of one of their assignments. So as part of that, we look also at leadership and management within the children's workforce. So there's a strong focus there on professionalism. And also importantly, of course, what you do in your final year is you have the chance to do your dissertation, which is your specialist piece of study, where you really get a chance to spread your wings, to focus on an aspect of early childhood that particularly interests you, and conduct your own piece of research in that field. And for example, some of our students this year looked at issues like young children's mental health and anxiety. Some of our students looked at the impact of separation and divorce on young children. Other students looked at a whole range of other subjects, including, for example, children's media and how that influences children's development. So a whole range of subjects, and you will find something that absolutely excites your interest, and we will match you then with a supervisor who will take you through that journey of pursuing your own research in the field. So it's a really exciting final year. Just to give you a brief flavour of the subject as a single honour subject, which is the route that Laura has chosen to follow. So by all means, chip in there, Laura, if you want to make a comment. So you can study early childhood as a single honours route. And so on top of everything that we've discussed already, some of the additional subjects that you'll study are education for sustainable development. So a really important live contemporary issue for children, and indeed for adults, for the whole world, is thinking about, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, thinking of our future in a post-human world, thinking about the future of the planet, and thinking about what does this mean in terms of young children's development, asking important questions like how early should we raise this issue with young children? How soon should we be talking to children about sustainable development? At what level do they have understanding of that? So that's a very important topic right throughout the 3 years for single honours. We also look at environments for children. So we go out, single honour students do a compulsory placement, but we also do a lot of field visits to settings. So we go out and we visit a school, we visit a children's centre, we visit arts and cultural centres. We look at what those environments bring to children, and we look at whether, for example, initiatives are used to support children's language and communication in the environments. But we look at that standing in a children's centre, looking at how they actually do things. And I think that's a very enriching experience for our students. We look at inclusive design. Does the way that environments are designed really work for children? Do they work for all children? And are we considering all the holistic needs of all of our children? We put a strong emphasis, because single honours puts a strong emphasis on application to practice. Reflective practice is a key element right throughout, and those are skills you will really hone and build and develop, from starting with the theory of what is reflective practice in your first year to actually putting it into practice in your second year when you go out into placement and writing a reflective journal and log on that. So we also look at a range of other issues with particular focus, of course, on constructions of parenthood, because parents are arguably the real experts in their children's lives. And it's really important that a competent early childhood practitioner understands, yes, the needs of children, but also understands and can communicate with parents also. We look at leadership in practice in the early years. We look at global perspectives, and we look at policy into practice. So if you like, a key concern for a single honours student is all the time that relationship of theory to practice in the field. That's the real thrust of single honours and the real emphasis there. And you get lots of opportunities to compare theory and practice right throughout your 3-year journey. I don't know, Laura, if you want to chip in with a few comments.
Yeah, I'd just like to pitch in. I'd say, education for sustainable development's a really interesting topic, as well as the enabling environments and the communication friendly spaces that we get to learn about. And like you said, I think the field visits really do give such an added benefit to the course, because you really do get to see how the theory of what you're learning about is applied in practice, how the real life settings are working using these approaches to try and tackle modern issues and, you know, come up with creative solutions to them. So with the Children's Centre and the schools and other places that we go to in the settings, I think it's a really valuable and enriching part of the single honours course.
You. And we're very grateful to the range of our partners who allow us to do that. We have arts and cultural partners, we have children's centre partners and school partners who are a really important part of our community as well, in terms of bringing that learning experience to life. Importantly, at level I in your second year, you will also, as a single honours student, have a mandatory placement. So you'll go into placement. Laura's about to embark on that stage of things, and you will be assessed on that placement in terms of reflecting on that placement. So it's very vibrant. The single honours course allows you that opportunity to apply theory to practice and to study a range of other topics. Okay, I'll be brief, I think, on this slide, which is on assessment methods, just to give you a bit of a flavour of how you will be assessed as an early childhood student. We use, in terms of learning, we use the typical mixture of lectures, seminars, tutorials. We try to keep our ratios in tutorials very small, that you will not be in a tutorial with more than 10 people. So they're really small groups. So you get to know your tutorial group very well. And there is that kind of sense of peer support in our tutorial groups. We also have one-to-one support, for example, you know, for feedback, something like that, or dissertation support. So you learn in a range of different ways. What's maybe missing from that as well is that we do put quite a big strong emphasis on going out there and seeing practice in the field and field work. In terms of assessment, about 3 weeks into your journey at Liverpool Hope, so quite early on, you'll do a small assessment, which is an early assessment. So you'll do a piece of writing of 500 words, quite a short piece of writing. And what that in a sense, that's not really significant for your examinations or assessment in first year. You're only 3 weeks into the journey. What it's very useful for is giving you an idea of how you're doing. Are you writing in an academic way? Could you write more effectively? And so you'll sit down then with your personal tutor and you'll get feedback on that first assessment to try and shape and hone your writing skills. There's a lot of support in that. So don't be afraid of that early assessment. It's very much there just to support you in terms of making that step up to academic writing. You'll also have essays as you go on throughout the year. You'll have group presentations where you'll collaborate together on a project, maybe something like a poster. For example, in first year, we do a poster presentation on a pioneer. So you might be focusing somebody like Maria Montessori or Steiner or the Macmillan sisters, and making a poster with a group of people on the contribution of that pioneer here and now. And also you will compile throughout your 3 years an electronic portfolio of your work, which then gives you a really solid actual piece of work that you can demonstrate your learning and the richness of that you have gathered and put together in an electronic portfolio, an e-portfolio, over the 3 years of your study. So that's an idea about assessment. I should also say actually that you will have examinations at the end of the year, but actually at the end of level C, you will not have to do next year an examination at that stage. So it will be totally based on assessment in your first year. Okay, the next slide is just to give you a sense of an additional certification that we offer. Some of you may be interested in this. It's a new offer for this year and quite an exciting addition to our portfolio of qualifications. We're offering an optional certificate for single honours students only. So if you're intending to study the subject as a single honours student, you have the option of taking certification as a graduate practitioner alongside your course. What you have to do for that is register for the GPC certificate. You have to complete 80 days of placement, so roughly about 25 to 30 days a year that you'll do in placement, usually maybe 1 day a week in a setting. And you will be assessed over the 3 years against 9 competencies. So you will be assessed, if you're interested in this extra professional certificate, you'll be assessed not only on what do you know about child development, but can you put it into practice when you're working with children? What do you know about safeguarding, but also do you understand how to put that policy into practice? Can you observe and plan for children in the setting? Can you work in partnership with parents and other professionals? So the new graduate practitioner certification would be of interest if you are interested in going into the field at a leadership level, so that after your 3 years, you're maybe interested in going into the field of early childhood at a leadership level. So what it offers is a level 6 graduate competency. So it means that you could be counted in the ratios of a setting, for example, somewhere like a children's centre at leadership level. And so you would have that alongside your BA honours. So anybody who's interested particularly in the graduate practitioner certification, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, or certainly to email about it and give you some more information about that in particular. Okay, so that's one additional opportunity, which is specific to our single honours programme and is just being introduced this year. There are also a range of other additional opportunities. For example, you can study abroad in your second year. And you can see, I hope on the slide, you can see one of our final year students, Lauren, who is graduating this year. In her second year, she went off to Belgium in her second term and worked in a kindergarten there. So that was one of our students' experience of study abroad. And so a number of students will take that option. You can also do as you go along, and I would imagine that Laura probably is registered for this, you can do the Service and Leadership Award, SALA. So you work for, you know, credits by additional voluntary contributions, which can be in various things. For example, being a student ambassador, contributing to the work of the university, or indeed contributing to work voluntary service in the community to gain credits for your Service and Leadership Award. So that's another thing that could really add to your portfolio of qualifications and accreditations as a graduate of Liverpool Hope. We also have international partners, what's known as Global Hope. So where we have partnerships internationally. For example, in places like Uganda, one of our previous students went out and worked with children with special educational needs in Uganda as part of Global Hope during the summer before his final year. So during that interim period, worked with children in Uganda as part of Global Hope. We also, I think we've probably given you quite a bit of information on the field trips that we have. We also have visits from local professionals. If you look at the slide in the corner, that's Alex Motter, who's one of the managers of the NSPCC in Merseyside. So she's one of the local professionals that came to share her experience with our final year students in terms of social work with children in the context of the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Which is an important voluntary sector agency and one that we have a partnership with locally. So there's a whole range of additional opportunities that you can access as an early childhood student as well. So I think pretty much our final slide, which is what do our graduates go on to do. So our graduates go on to do a whole range of different things. 96 of our graduates were in employment or further education 6 months after graduating, which is above the UK average of 94.3. And I think as a university, Liverpool Hope is rated as one of the highest in the country in terms of graduate employment. So that's a real indicator in terms of those of you who are thinking maybe beyond this as to what you might do. So a high percentage of our graduates go on to graduate level employment, which is important, or go on to postgraduate study. A little flavour of that is that graduate students have gone on to do the Masters in Developmental Psychology, which, as you can imagine, is a very interesting route from developing an awareness and knowledge of the subject in an interdisciplinary context of early childhood to then really focus at master's level on developmental psychology. So quite a number of our students have chosen to do that. Also, we have masters in interdisciplinary studies. So for example, you can study early childhood with pedagogy, early childhood with leadership, early childhood with developmental psychology, indeed, as an interdisciplinary masters. A significant number, about 50% of our students, go on to do the PGCE, the portfolio of teaching qualifications that there are at Liverpool Hope. And as a Liverpool Hope graduate, you're guaranteed an interview for a PGCE in teaching, should that be your choice. So that's an important route. Also, some of our students who want to work with children in the family and community context have gone on to do the Masters in Social Work, which is another really valuable career option that we offer at Liverpool Hope. So the range of employment that our graduates have gone into, for example, some of our graduates work in children's centres. We had the privilege of working with one of our recent graduates at one of the local children's centres throughout last year at Granby Children's Centre. Our graduates have worked in organisations like the Foundation Years Trust in Birkenhead, also for national and international charities, the arts and cultural organisation Story Barn in Liverpool, but also the NSPCC, where I actually had the privilege again of meeting a number of our graduates on a recent visit there. Some others have gone on to work as part of the local authority multi-agency teams with children. So that gives you a flavour of the wide range of employment and further education opportunities that graduates have followed, which probably seems a long way from your journey today, but assuredly those 3 years pass very quickly, and it's important to think about where your journey goes from university on. So finally, and that was a bit of a rattle through the last slide, over to you if you have any questions, or perhaps Stephen might share if we have any questions that are already there on the Q&A.
Yeah, so we haven't got any questions at the minute, so I'll just very quickly share my experience of the course, obviously from a combined honours perspective, just to offer that against the single honours perspective that Laura offers.
Lovely.
You know, as we've covered there, there's a lot of sort of combinations you can do with early childhood that seem to make a lot of sense on the surface, and some that maybe seem a little bit more obscure. I think what's really good about the sort of smaller tutorials that Cleona alluded to earlier is that you'll be in sessions and having discussions with classmates who are doing these different kinds of combinations. So, you know, I was studying education and early childhood, and I would be having discussions with people from early childhood and SEN, early childhood and psychology. So we were having these discussions from very different sorts of perspectives and backgrounds, and that really enriched the experience. And what's great to see from my point of view as someone who's graduated a couple of years ago is that the core content of the curriculum stayed the same, because it is, well, mostly the same, because it is a really, really good a multidisciplinary curriculum, but also all the added opportunities that have been added more recently with the sort of mandatory placements for single honours students and the partnerships and that kind of thing. That really seemed to enrich the course as well. So it's a great time to join. But I don't think at the minute we've got any other questions. So, Cleona, I don't know if you're happy to end it there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Stephen. And that's lovely to hear that perspective as well from combined studies, because that also is a very rich experience where you're comparing and contrasting across subjects. And certainly I'm sure a number of people who'll be tuning into this, that's the route that they will want to follow. Suffice to say that if there's any other questions, we are more than happy to answer them. Just all of our details are there on the website. Feel free to contact any of us if you have questions that you want answered by email. That's not a problem at all. So thank you for listening, and thanks to everybody who's collaborated on the presentation today.